Welcome to the Illegal Use of Hands to the Face YouTube channel. If you're wondering exactly what's going to happen in the 2021 football season, you've come to the right place because I've kind of got a thing for knowing exactly what's going to happen in the future. But, we finally got through all our record predictions for individual teams. So I figured now, rather than having sort of like a recency bias as like I'm probably looking at like the best version of each team when we go back, we'll just look at the group as a collective now and actually get my overall thoughts on how the season will play out. And then next week for our episodes, we'll go with Jake and see what he has to say for his overall thoughts for the season. But I do have to say some of these teams' records changed drastically when I just had them on a full scale as opposed to the whole league. So I guess how I'm going to do this is because I literally went through and I picked every single game from the season once again. But I obviously don't want to talk about all, 272 games we have now. So I figured I'll go through and highlight key matchups from each week of the season to start. Jake, where what do you think? You know what? I think I'll just have you give some reaction to what I say after each week of the season, and then we can backtrack a little. Okay, right. So week 1, the 2 games I have highlighted here for week 1 games that I thought were important, or I had a hard time picking the winners in, were Cleveland at Kansas City and Denver at the New York Giants. Those 2 games were difficult ones for me to pick, and I really wanted to pick Cleveland in that week 1 game. But in the end, I went with Kansas City because I feel like they're going to be just more prepared right off the bat at the beginning of the season. And then in the Denver at the New York Giants game, that one just took me a while to pick because I don't really like either of these teams too much, but I ended up going with the Giants in that one there. So what do you think to start? Any surprises there?
Yeah, those 2 games are hard to pick for 2 very different reasons. But yeah, that Kansas City Cleveland game is probably going to be the game to watch week 1. I mean, maybe Tampa Bay Buffalo would have been it, but you just have to put Dallas in that game. And the Kansas City Cleveland game, that's not even a primetime game, is it? It's just it's 1 o'clock.
Nope. Yeah, just 1 o'clock, just random afternoon game for no reason.
Yeah, that feels like the treatment that the Broncos Giants game should get. Not a premier matchup like that, 2 AFC playoff teams, but yeah, the Broncos Giants game, that's just going to be miserable for all parties involved, unless Danny Dimes just turns it up and Saquon's back now. He's off the pup list, so I mean, the talent on the field won't be lacking for either offense. It's just the 2 men at the helm of those offenses will be holding the talent back.
Yeah, that's basically how I feel as well. And the funny thing is, you'll see this when we get to the end of the schedule. I just feel like I got to a point where I was thinking, why is it like I have so many teams with like these high win totals, and so many teams with really low win totals, and the thing that makes the NFL fun to watch, which is definitely a reason I feel like my views are going to get slanted a lot, like they're going to be wrong during the season, is that like even awful teams are competitive with very good teams in the NFL. Like the New York Jets at 0-13 could go beat the LA Rams last season. I mean, that's just the perfect example of like how did this happen just randomly on a Sunday afternoon. And that's what's great about the NFL. But I will say, if there's any weakness when we come to the end of like how everything falls out for this, I feel like I probably gave the worst teams too many losses and the good teams too many wins because I don't know where they're going to fall exactly. In week 2, I only had one matchup that I starred in terms of thinking, how's this one going to go for... Like, I had a little trouble, and I ended up going with Minnesota over Arizona when Minnesota goes to Arizona week 2. That's not even a game I really remember talking about earlier, but the more and more I think about it, the more I'm intrigued by it because I feel like those 2 teams are kind of sitting like in a relatively similar spot, and like people don't really know what they're going to be this season. But as my schedule plays out with how I see it going, it's kind of a really like big game in terms of like what I actually think how it's going to go, because it's like I think Minnesota actually will be a good team this season, and then Arizona, like I think they're gonna drop off while Minnesota's going to be on an uptrend this season especially.
Yeah, they're two middle of the road NFC teams that are fighting for probably that 7 spot in the playoffs. I, I'm the same with you. I'm not a big fan of Arizona, but I also am not a big fan of Minnesota either. Uh I do think Minnesota has the edge in that game, just for it being earlier in the season, and also I'm pretty sure you could have anyone coach or anyone on the Vikings staff that is not Mike Zimmer be the head coach for that game, and they would probably coach circles around Cliff Kingsbury. Just I have zero faith in him to maintain and keep his job by the end of the season.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same, especially with how I have the season going for them. That's kind of the trend I have Arizona going on too. I don't know how likely it is that he would keep his job after the end of this season if it's not what the Cardinals want it to be. In week 3, the first game I have to highlight is kind of a battle of the basement game in terms of like what I think these teams' final records will be. Like not two good teams, but it's Carolina at Houston. I had to think about this one for a little bit, not terribly long, but I ended up going with Carolina over Houston. And then 2 other games I had. Miami at Las Vegas. I went with Miami because still lower on the Dolphins than a lot of other people are, and low on Vegas, but I think more people are low on Vegas. And last game I have to mention, I got a game Minnesota's playing in again. Seattle goes to Minnesota this year, and this year Seattle came back in the game against them that they had at home against Minnesota last year, but this year it's in Minnesota. I think that changes things, and I think Minnesota beats Seattle at home.
Yeah, that Carolina Houston game, I don't think that's as intriguing as what you think. Just not very high on Houston, though. I do think I am in agreement with you. They won't be as bad as everyone else thinks they are, because everyone thinks they're going to go like 0-18 somehow and just not be able to pull out a win. They're going to find a way to win a couple. But early in that, they're going to win some late season ones that against teams where it's like, all right, we really need to get in the playoffs here. We need to beat the Texans, and everyone's like, that's a cupcake. We're gonna get in, and then the Texans just somehow beat them, and then like eliminate a team from playoff contention. But early in the season, I don't think they got that.
Yeah.
Vegas, Miami, that's gonna be one to watch, because that's just an inept organization in Vegas, like throwing out these players that like jeez, they're doing everything they can. I love Darren Waller. He needs to get out of Vegas. He just got there last season, like in Vegas. I'm not talking about like the organization. He's been with them but he just got to the desert in Vegas. Get him out of there now, please. I don't need to see him rot away there. But yeah, even with how inept that team is, they still might be able to pull out a win against a squad like Miami, just because of the quarterback play. And I would give Derek Carr the edge over Tua as of right now. I don't know what's going to be happening by week 3, but as of right now. And then that last game, yeah, not very high on Minnesota, like I said. It could be a close one. They've always given Seattle trouble. But I still think, even with Russell Wilson now begging the organization to please just sign me some offensive lineman, I think he'll still find a way to scramble around and win that game.
Okay. Week 4, I've got 2 games that I wanted to highlight. I've got the Indianapolis at Miami matchup, which I've been saying all off season has been the game that I was picking to be a tie. I have to say, for this schedule, just going through the whole thing again, knowing what we know about Carson Wentz at this point, I'm going against the grain here, and I'm actually going to give Miami the win now, since Carson Wentz may not be playing or may be on a limited schedule. And then Tampa Bay at New England. I know I gave New England this win once before in the Tampa Bay prediction, just because I was trying to find 2 losses for Tampa Bay, or maybe it was just a toss-up. I can't remember which of the 2 it was, but I think it was just a toss-up. But in this one, I'm going to give Tampa Bay the win straight up at New England.
Yeah, I think this Miami game is one of the only games for Indy that they can win over the first 6 or 7 weeks of the season if Carson Wentz misses them. Uh, well, if Carson Wentz was there, if he misses them, still, I'm not leaning towards Indy. I'm leaning towards Miami in that game if Carson Wentz is there. But I wouldn't be shocked if Jacob Eason somehow wins them that game. Because it's their one winnable game over like a 7 game stretch.
Yeah, the first six
that,
games of the season. I know what you mean.
yeah. And then that second one, what was it again?
Tampa Bay at New England.
Oh yeah, Tampa Bay, New England. Yeah, I'm leaning towards Tampa. I'm very high on New England this year, but I'm gonna keep leaning towards Tampa in that one, and probably against all their matchups except that Washington football team game.
So in week 5, I actually didn't have any matchup at all that I figured was worth pointing out. I feel like I kind of just picked the favorite in week 5. But in week 6, the one game I do have to point out is that initially I did want to go with Kansas City in it, but I was like, nah, they got this time. And I'm going to go with Kansas City at the Washington football team. The Washington football team beats Kansas City in week 6.
Very, very possible. I think yeah, that's nothing to sneeze at. The football team has the ability to shock the world this season. I'm not saying win it all, but win some pretty tough games. I mean, they're playing against the 2 teams that were in the Super Bowl in their schedule. And those 2 games they can win. Just that defense is so stout and young. And with the quarterback play that they may have now, whether that be Fitzpatrick or Heineke, I know you're leaning more towards Heineke, but whoever is back there, they're going to make plays happen and do some magic. So, I mean, they're a big wild card. I'm not wild card in the sense of they can very much exceed expectations. I have them winning their division, but just a wild card of they could be more than the 4 seed. They could probably be 2nd seed, 3rd seed, something higher than that.
Yeah, I could see it happening. And just to point out the Heineke thing, I don't really think it's likely that Heineke starts any games anytime soon. It's just I'm a fan of Heineke. That doesn't mean that I actually think it's going to happen. Or really that I'm rooting against Fitzpatrick either, because who can root against Fitzpatrick? I can't do that.
They have 2 great quarterbacks, 2 very rootable quarterbacks.
They do. They're very like they're a team you want to root for at this point. Week 7, I've got one matchup as well. Philadelphia at Vegas. Who do you think I went with?
Philly.
Yeah. There we go.
Need to get them 2 wins.
I got Philly beating Vegas in week 7, and that's my highlight game for that week. What do you think?
Yeah, it's gonna be a miserable one. That's not prime time, is it?
No.
Okay, good. Because I would be able to stomach that if I had to sit down and watch that Thursday, Sunday, or Monday night.
Yeah, no. I wish. I mean, I would love to watch Philly play Vegas on a night game. I'd actually enjoy that. That's like two like evenly matched teams, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Well, that game could get a lot more entertaining if somehow like a Deshaun Watson trade gets through and he gets sent to Philly, because there's been talk of that, and he just crushes Vegas. That would be great. Just utterly destroy them.
Now, are you ready? You didn't see this coming though. I have Philly a second week in a row in like a big spot game in week 8 as well, because I got Philly going on a 2-game win streak because they're going to Detroit and they're going to beat Detroit as well.
I don't know, man. I don't know about that. I'm big on the Lions not being like king of the basement dwellers. That's what I'm big on the Lions for. I don't think they're going to be in the top 10, but they're going to be 10. Because Dan Campbell's going to coach him up. I know the big meme is him being utterly insane, but the more and more I listen to him, he's got like some decent points he makes, and I have like how he conducts himself as a coach. Not in the press conferences. In the press conferences, he looks unhinged, but as a coach, he seems like he's doing a good job. And also, the young talent on that team. You can't deny Melifonwu coming out there, and I don't, dude, my one concern with Devontae Smith going into the NFL is that build, that frame. I don't know how he's going to handle against a physical corner, and he's going up against a guy that should be playing linebacker, and if he's lined up against him, ooh, it's going to be a tough day for him.
Well, that's obviously why I highlighted that matchup that week, because I'm just ready to watch Devontae Smith and Melifonwu go one-on-one. That's really what I'm excited for in that matchup. But yeah, I picked Philly to win two games straight, which is kind of interesting to look back
another
on.
game after that.
No, but obviously we still have our other Week 8 matchup that we have described as the most important game of the season to both of us. Do you remember this matchup?
Chargers Vikings, isn't it?
No, I haven't changed it. No, it's New England at the Los Angeles Chargers.
Oh, I knew it was Chargers in there.
And I'm still picking the Patriots here, so just thought I'd point that out to you again.
I'm very, very high on the Chargers, man. I mean, going into that game, they're playing against the Browns and the Ravens, two run-heavy teams, and that's what New England killed them with last season, was just running the ball down their throat. And I know you're skeptical of Brandon Staley with this whole defensive look that he has, because the Chargers had an extra man in the box all last season to help with their run defense. I think he coaches them up, still run that too high safety. And like I said, two very run-heavy teams going into that, they're going to get knocked around in those two games, and they're going to learn from it. I think they have their bye after those two games. Go to New England then. It's at New England, correct?
For LA?
Yeah.
They're at home.
Oh, they're at home. All right, so it's even better. They're at home. I think they'll be able to handle it. I think they win that game.
We'll see. That's why it's one of the most important games of the year.
We're gonna be on the phone that whole game, just talking smack to each other whenever anything
We're
happens.
gonna have a whole episode devoted to that game alone, just so you know.
Just one of us laughing at the other for 30 minutes.
Yeah. Week 9. My game here that I wanted to highlight for Week 9. Only one game, but a very good game. This is a game we're very excited for. Tennessee at the Los Angeles Rams. And I actually went with the Rams here. I don't know if I did that before, but I'm going with the Rams now in this iteration of my schedule prediction.
Yeah, that's a tough one, man. We like the Titans because of just the talent that is on there, and like the talent is a frosting on a cake, and that cake is very dry and doesn't taste good. I think this is a great analogy for it, because AJ Brown, Julio Jones, Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, those guys are going to fill up a lot of holes that really aren't shining through right now, or probably won't shine through because of that talent. But that defense, I mean, they have Bud Dupree at a very luxurious contract, but they have him, so they have a pass rusher. But looking at that one, I like both those offenses. I think it's going to come down to whoever has the better defense, and that's the Rams.
That's fair. I mean, I went with them too, so I can't disagree entirely, even though I think you're hating on the Titans a little too much there. You know, that top heaviness, we said it. We have to make it very clear. They're the only extremely top-heavy team that we've ever been really confident in. I don't feel like there's any other roster in like NFL history that I've been like, you know, this whole roster isn't that great, but like the top-heavy part is like so good that it could elevate it. It really is. It's insane what they're doing there. Week 10. I have one matchup in Week 10 that I want to point out, and this is the matchup you thought was in Week 8. That is the Minnesota at Los Angeles Chargers game. I gave this one to the Chargers. I did. So
good.
Yeah,
good.
You didn't. You were hoping that I would go. You were hoping that you could yell at me for picking Minnesota in this one, but I did pick the Chargers here.
Yeah, it's just funny to see how your biases work out, because the Chargers were first, I think, when we did our predictions, and you picked the Vikings, and then we did the Vikings, and you picked the Vikings again, and now you're picking the Chargers. So. Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah, just all over the place. There's randomness. I tried. Listen, I said before earlier in this, there's randomness in the NFL in that like there's no way that you can predict the 0-13 Jets beating the Rams last season, and that stuff will definitely happen this season. So I just tried to. I really did try to average it out to at least like one upset a week, and even one upset a week isn't even close to enough for like what the NFL actually is. It's like 3/4 of the teams that we expect to win in a week win, and then there's still like 1/4 of the games that are like, oh wow, that was surprising, which is why I love the NFL so much.
Mm-hmm. But that Chargers Vikings game, I mean, it's gonna be another opportunity for one of us to laugh at the other. I mean, you're picking the Chargers now, so you're kind of saving your behind. But yeah,
Not really. I mean, I think that I'm pretty sure I've said the entire time I think the Chargers are going to make the playoffs. I don't, or at least be right on that brink if they don't make it.
well, and but you're saying it's going to be purely because of Justin Herbert.
Yeah, it is. My week 11 game. I'm tempted to call these like games of the week, but they're definitely not games of the week as of some of them you've seen. It's just like matchups that I'm highlighting because I may have picked like, or I either thought it was close and I thought I wanted to point out which one of the teams I picked close, or it's an upset. Those are really the two things. Week 11, Miami at the New York Jets. I picked the Jets. So
yeah, I think I don't know if I gave the Jets that game, but I know that I gave them one or two games in the division wins there, whether that be New England and Miami, or I don't think I gave them both games against Miami. But the Jets late in the season, I think Zach Wilson can pull his head out of his rear and make some magic. I think he's going to make magic happen all season. It's just how frequent that's going to be, and does the good outweigh the bad with that? And no matter what, I think even if Zach Wilson makes 15 mistakes and has 2 great plays a game, this is still going to be better than what Tua does. Because Tua can make 0 mistakes but have nothing like, wow, that you're just eyes bulging out your head, jaw-dropping plays. And that's what makes you an elite quarterback in the end, or at least a serviceable quarterback.
yeah.
And, no, I mean, Tua's serviceable. It's just, if you want him to be your franchise quarterback, it's not something you're really looking for. It's like, yes, we have the greatest left-handed play manager or game manager of all time here. It's like, that's not really what you're looking for when you draft him in the top 5.
Second best left-handed game manager of all time. First would be Tim Tebow, but I'll get over it for the time being.
Did he manage the game though? He managed the game in the 4th quarter.
Yeah, exactly. He managed it perfectly.
Something. I thought you were gonna pull like Kellen Moore or someone out and just be like, yeah, he's the best.
Nah, he managed the game perfectly. He always managed to win right at the end. That's perfect game management. Week 12 actually gets really interesting to me. I have 3 games that I wanted to highlight here. I did at a point have to start picking some games against San Francisco because I really have a tight race for the NFC West, and eventually I think I got the Niners on like a really hot tear early in the season, winning at like double-digit games by this point, maybe even, or at least like 9. This is week 12, so they were doing really well up to this point. And I feel like they had to drop one eventually here. So they're playing Minnesota here. Minnesota's going to San Francisco, but I have Minnesota beating them there. Then there's a game, Tennessee at New England. I know that we usually get Vrabel, or old New England coaches beating Bill Belichick when they come up against each other again. But for whatever reason, I think this time New England will be able to get the best of the Titans here. New England's the home team in that game. And then the last game of Week 12 that I want to point out, I really think all 3 of these games are really interesting. So I think Week 12 could kind of be a big week in the season, just in terms of looking at a lot of these matchups and how they could play out. It's also the Thanksgiving week, which makes the games pretty interesting. You've got Chicago going to Detroit, and I just feel like with how things have been playing out this offseason, we've kind of gotten the quarterback situations, I feel like, backwards this offseason in 2 spots. It feels like now the Niners are leaning towards giving Trey Lance the job much earlier than we anticipated, based off everything we hear coming out of camps, while the Chicago Bears, and we hyped up Justin Fields all offseason, are seemingly not prepared to like give him the job anytime soon at all. Like, they're just going to let Andy Dalton ride this out as much as possible, which is surprising to me. But with that being said, because of this, I feel like the storyline has to change for my season prediction. And because of that, I've got Chicago going to Detroit, losing to Detroit, and that's the final straw that kicks Andy Dalton out of the starting job to finally get Justin Fields in the game after Week 12 going into Week 13.
Yeah, I mean, as a storyline, that would be fantastic. Everyone watches the Thanksgiving games, and everyone watches that early one with Detroit, and then you haven't even eaten any turkey yet, and you already want to go to bed. It's just it's so boring, and it's either like last year it was against the Texans, it's usually against the Bears, but if Andy Dalton, like if Justin Fields is starting that game, that's going to be fun to watch just because it's Justin Fields and he's gonna light it up. At least I hope. If it's Andy Dalton, it's gonna be a snooze fest, man. It's gonna be so bad. It's like when he played last year. It's like why? Why? Like I understand the Cowboys have the Thanksgiving game every year, and the Lions have it every year, but last year, if the Cowboys don't have anyone that's healthy, why did you? Whatever. I'm getting off track for that. The Tennessee New England game. Yeah. Former Patriot coaches that become head coaches can't win. Well, Vrabel's kicking that trend, but they usually can't win anywhere. But if they win anytime, it's against Belichick. I don't know. Vrabel hasn't lost to him yet. I don't know about giving Belichick the edge there. Though, if there's anything that's going to stop Tennessee, it's going to be a solid defense, and that's what Belichick coaches up best. Coaches up solid defenses, and he's got some of his main players back too that opted out last season, and also he drafted some solid rookies too. And then what was the other game that you said?
The first game I mentioned, Minnesota at San Francisco, and I finally got San Fran. Like this is like it's either the first or second game of the season San Francisco drops.
I think there's other games so you could pick for San Francisco to lose than that one. I understand that you're higher on the Vikings than me. I've said that like 1,000 times already. But yikes. I don't know about that one. It's just that kind of crawling up my spine. Ugh. I don't like the idea of Kirk Cousins beating that Niners team that I think could lose 2 games at most.
Okay. Well, I gave you the Philadelphia streak earlier in the season, which was surprising. Let me say this now. Now I've got a surprising San Francisco streak here because week 13, I think they lose again. They go to Seattle and they drop that game to Seattle as well.
That's understandable. I can see that. Division games are tough.
Okay.
Russell Wilson, he's a magician, whether, he decides to turn that on or off at the right time. But that's far more understandable than that Minnesota game.
Yeah. And riding high, though, because this San Fran at Seattle game is a Monday night game, riding high on a short week, not paying much attention, the Seahawks immediately follow up with a week 14 game at Houston, which they lose.
I like that. I don't think that's likely, but I like that.
Gotta get everybody some wins.
No, that could, like I said, about Houston week 2 against week 3. They're not going to win games early in the season. I don't think they will. Late in the season, when teams are making playoff pushes, like Seattle's going to be fighting for a wild card. They're going to lose that game, and it's going to kick them out of the wild card contention. I think that's what Houston's role is going to be, just playing spoiler for a bunch of teams that have playoff aspirations.
Oh, that's funny. Week 15, just going through the matchups, I didn't have any games where I really picked the I'm pretty sure I picked the favorite in every single Week 15 game. Week 15, for whatever reason, to me isn't too terribly exciting. Oh, this is the game I already mentioned. I did pick the Chargers over Kansas City. This is the game where Kansas City will be at the Chargers, and I picked that twice already. So I didn't star that here and now, but yeah, that's basically the only upset I have for the week, but it's something I've already talked about before. I just feel like Justin Herbert could be able to just will his team to a victory against the Chiefs if he decides to show out.
I don't think he'd have to will it, though. That team, well-oiled machine with Brandon Staley at the helm.
Don't worry, you'll have your chance next week to give us all your wins and losses that you think are special. Week 16, though, I replaced my tie, as I told you. My tie is not the Miami-Indianapolis game anymore, but it does include Indianapolis again. Indianapolis goes to Arizona in Week 16, and this is where I have my tie for this season. And one other game that I had a hard time picking in this week that I felt like highlighting, Miami is going to New Orleans on Monday Night Football, and I felt like there's probably a lot of people that are like sitting, like you could go either way in that game. I don't know. maybe not, but I ended up going with New Orleans in that game. So I wanted to point that one out for Week 16 as well.
That Arizona Indy one, that's definitely. I mean, if Carson Wentz isn't playing for that Miami game, very likely tie there. Uh, just the Colts defense is solid, so that Kingsbury offense is going to stall out eventually. It always does. I mean, they can string 2 or 3 good drives together, and then after that, just nothing. Uh, while that Colts offense, I think they could dink and dunk because at least that's what Frank Reich did with Philip Rivers, and Philip Rivers was way older and aging and falling apart. Granted, Carson Wentz looks like he's falling apart. So maybe they'd have to go back to the old strategy of just dink and dunk their way downfield to get some points, hand the rock off to Jonathan Taylor, Marlon Mack, Naheem Hines, all those guys. Yeah, that's very, very likely to be a tie. If I had to pick one, that'd probably be it. And that second game, Miami, New Orleans. I think at this point in the season, if it's going how you and I have it in our heads of Tua's just sinking up the joint, maybe Jacoby Brissett gets in there, and then we see like him against Taysom or Jameis. Him against Jameis would be pretty interesting. Two stout, big arm quarterbacks there, that everyone thinks can move, like for some reason, but they can't. That would be actually fun to watch.
I like the headline there. Week 17, there's a decent amount of intriguing matchups. I didn't have any ones highlighted here that I wanted to point out earlier. The Rams are going to Baltimore. I'm picking Baltimore in that one, and Minnesota's going to Green Bay, and I'm picking Green Bay in that one. So basically, just picking the home team in the two potential matchups that are close that week. That's what I'll say there.
My heart there. I thought you were gonna pick Minnesota again. I'm like, are you just highlighting these games so you could tell me that you think Minnesota is gonna go undefeated or something?
No, Minnesota is not anywhere near undefeated, but I think they're better. But with how I have everything playing out, they're a lot better in the end than you may think.
Okay. Yeah. What was that first game again? Jeez, sorry, it just completely left my mind.
The Rams at the Ravens.
Oh,
and I've got it being the Ravens. They're the home team.
Yeah, for that one, going into it, I'd probably just pick whoever is the home team for that one. Those teams are very equal. Same thing with the Tennessee game, except the defenses match up well there too. It's two good defenses, two good offenses. Yeah, that's gonna be a fun one to watch, and I don't blame you for just picking the home team in that one.
Yeah. Week 18 though, this is exciting, and I did have to go through after I completed picking all these games through week 17. I did have to go through and see how all the playoff implications would play out, so that I could be correct to see who would be playing their starters, who wouldn't be. Now you may be surprised to hear this, but the two games that would potentially be slated for Sunday Night Football for trying to win the division. First one, the one that would probably get thrown into that slot, is San Francisco at the Los Angeles Rams. At this point in time, both teams would be 13-3 for me, and it would be winner takes the division. So that's the one game that's basically just up in the air in terms of who would get the division. And then the other game that is for the division crown here is Chicago at Minnesota. Is a game that's going to be up for the division crown as well, which if you can't understand...
For the division?
Yes.
Oh, jeez.
So at this point, both of these teams will be at 10-6, and the Packers do get a win in Week 18 earlier in the day. I can almost guarantee that that'll stay a 1 o'clock game against Detroit, but that only gets them to 9-8. Both of these teams are already at 10 wins. And in both of these games, the San Francisco at Rams and Chicago at Minnesota, both of them, I, once again, kind of did what I did before, and I selected the home teams, which means that Minnesota is going to take the North, and the Rams are going to take the NFC West. But now, with all that being said, there weren't too many other things that had terrible playoff implications. Week 18, I have the Jets beating the Bills because the Bills won't have anything to play for, and I felt like the Bills still could win that game, but I'll give it to the Jets starters over the Bills. And there may be a few other matchups like that I had going on. but there were only I think there were only 4 out of the 16 games that really had much of playoff implications week 18. It was cool that 2 of them did actually decide the division just with how I had everything playing out. So to finally run down after picking every game for the season all at once without really having any sort of recency bias for any of these teams. Like I said, I think the teams that I have are bad probably have too few wins, and the teams that are good have too many wins. But I do think the standings, I want to make this very clear. The win totals may be wrong, but the standings are what I truly believe, honestly. For the AFC East, the division winner will be the Bills at 13-4. The Patriots will be second in the AFC East, also at 13-4, but both losses came against the Bills, so 2 losses came against the Bills, so Bills get the tiebreaker there. The Patriots are the 6th seed in the AFC. Then the Dolphins will be 8-9. They missed the playoffs. The Jets 3-14. They missed the playoffs. The AFC West, the division winner, is the Chiefs. Actually, sorry. Any thoughts on the AFC East standings there, quick?
No, sounds about right. I mean, maybe a couple extra wins for New England, I'd make losses, but it sounds about the right order that I'd have them in.
Okay. AFC West, the Chiefs I have as the division winner at 14-3. The Chargers come in second place in the division at 11-6. They are the 7 seed in the AFC. The Raiders go 5-12 for third place, and the Broncos go 3-14 for fourth place in the AFC West. Thoughts on the AFC West?
It's about as expected. I mean, maybe you could flop Denver and Vegas just because Denver less dysfunction, more offensive firepower, but Vegas actually has a quarterback. So maybe Drew Luck shocks the world and Denver is actually the second spot in the West. I don't know. But as of the order that you have it there, I like it. The only thing that I think anyone could argue so far that you said for both divisions is the order that you have Denver and Vegas in.
Mm-hmm. So then, I'll go to this. This is really interesting how I have this play out. Okay, because I did need to look up tiebreakers to figure out how this would all go down. Mm-hmm. In the AFC North, I'm actually going to start at the bottom here. Tied for last place in the division, and like I said, I just want to be honest here again. I'm giving these teams too few wins because they're gonna the NFL's a little more balanced than this, so they're gonna get more wins than this. But
I know who it is.
But they are no. They're tied at the bottom. The Bengals and Steelers are both at the bottom of this division with 3-14 records. I definitely think Pittsburgh. I don't think there's any chance Pittsburgh has that few wins realistically.
I do.
I do. But I don't know who. I didn't know. There's still a lot of I still think that Pittsburgh's going to be a lot worse than a lot of people think that they're going to be. And the Bengals are bad though. I don't really have an excuse for the Bengals. Then, kind of tied for first place in the division. I didn't mention this in the Week 18 point, but in Week 18 for me, both these teams, the Ravens and the Browns, will get wins against Pittsburgh. Baltimore gets a win against Pittsburgh, and Cleveland gets a win against Cincinnati. They're both the home teams in Week 18, and they're both facing opponents that I would say are much inferior to them. The reason it's not... It will be interesting to watch, but if they both jump out to big leads early and it's obvious, then with how I have the schedule playing out, it's still the same. I had Baltimore and Cleveland split. I said that in both their predictions, that Baltimore probably wins the first one, Cleveland wins the second one. This tiebreaker for me will actually come down. It was a decent way down the list. Like, it was not the first tiebreaker, the second, the third. I think this was the 5th tiebreaker. This will come down to strength of victory, meaning the team that has margin of victory. So like, if the Browns are plus 40 and the Ravens are plus 35, in terms of the end of the season, the Browns will be the team that makes the playoffs in this case. And just because the Browns were a lower seed last year, that means that they should have slightly inferior competition to Baltimore, and because of that, I'm going to say that their strength of victory can be greater than Baltimore's this season, and they will actually get to jump the Ravens here and take the division. So the Browns win the division at 15-2, and the Ravens are the 5 seed. Now that brings us to the AFC South with basically, shockingly, didn't really think this maybe at the beginning of the year, but really is kind of like a one-dog race. Like I don't feel like there's much competition here for the Titans. The Texans, for me, go 2-15 to be in last place in the division. The Jaguars go 6-11 to be in third place in the division. The Colts are barely in front of the Jaguars because they're 6-10-1. And the Titans win the division at 15-2. So that means that we have 3 teams in the AFC that go 15-2. And the Titans actually win the conference because in the way I did my prediction, one of their losses was to an NFC team. The Ravens and Browns didn't lose a game to an NFC team, which means that their records within the conference are worse than the Titans. So, they both have the tiebreakers. The Browns beat the Ravens in their division. So, the Browns will be the 2 seed, but the Titans have a better conference record, so the Titans take the 1 seed over the Browns. So, just to run that back to you, I gave you all the AFC divisions. For my standings for the AFC, the 1 seed is the Titans, the 2 seed is the Browns, the 3 seed is the Kansas City Chiefs, the 4 seed is the Bills, the 5 seed is the Ravens, the 6 seed is the Patriots, and the 7 seed is the LA Chargers. If your team wasn't mentioned, I'm sorry, but they missed the playoffs for me in the AFC. Now, let's try to run through the NFC a little quicker. Maybe the most exciting division in football is up. The
NFC East.
Yes, it actually is. That's who we're talking about next. But I mean, you have any thoughts on my 3 teams being 15-2 with all those tiebreakers going on?
I mean, it's going to be a fun year for the networks if that's what happens, because I can just imagine Terry Bradshaw or someone be like, all right, so you got to understand here, the strength of schedule, compare your AFC opponents to your NFC opponents, and that's how it all shakes out. That's why Tennessee's the 1 and Cleveland's the 2 and Baltimore's the 5. And you're just going to have, like, him being all exasperated. They're like, Terry, calm down. Here, have a glass of water, please. Just, it's going to be fun watching them try to explain it if that's how it all shakes out.
I hope so. I mean, I feel like the way I've represented it gives it a pretty good storyline. So we'll see. But for the NFC East, the worst team in the division is going to be the Eagles, going 3-14. The Giants, even though I think they have potential, it really comes down to the Daniel Jones thing, and I don't feel like I talked about them much so far. But they go 5-12 in this just because we don't believe in Daniel Jones. The Cowboys do, because it's a 17-game season, do not get stuck at that 500 mark, which seemingly they get stuck at so often when they play 16 games, but they barely get over it, go 9-8, and they still don't make the playoffs in my prediction, so I'm sorry about that. And the NFC East is taken by the Washington football team that goes 12-5 to win the division. Then the NFC West. The NFC West, the bottom team in the NFC West is the 4-12-1 Cardinals. The third place team in the NFC West is the 8-9 Seahawks. The Cardinals and Seahawks are both hurt by the fact that they have the Niners and Rams in their division, which we've talked about a lot. Those are going to be really tough games to go win, even though I gave the Seahawks one of those games. Then the number 5 seed in the NFC goes to the 49ers at 13-4. As I said, they lose to the Rams week 18, which means that the Rams are 14-3 in the division winner in the NFC West. The NFC North, the last place team in the NFC North is the Detroit Lions. Sorry if no one saw that coming. They go 2-15. The Packers are the third place team in the NFC North at 9-8. The second place team in the NFC North is the Chicago Bears, who slot in the playoffs as the 7 seed. They make the playoffs as the 7 seed in the NFC. And the Vikings win the division at 11-6. The last group of teams for the NFC is the NFC South. The last place team in the NFC South is the Atlanta Falcons. They go 4-13. The Carolina Panthers are the third place team in the NFC South. They go 6-11. The second place team in the NFC South is the New Orleans Saints, who go 10-7 and are the sixth seed in the NFC. This is really insignificant, but they had a better winning. They were better against NFC teams than Chicago in how my system played out. So since they were better against NFC teams than Chicago was, they get the 6th seed over the Bears, who will be the 7th seed, even though they both went 10-7. And then the Buccaneers win the division at 15-2. And for the NFC playoff picture, I have as the 1 seed the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the 2 seed is the LA Rams, the 3 seed is the Washington Football Team, the 4 seed is the Minnesota Vikings, the 5 seed is the San Francisco 49ers, the 6 seed is the New Orleans Saints, and the 7th seed is the Chicago Bears. I'm sorry for running through the NFC all at once, but any thoughts on my NFC standings at the end of the season?
I don't know how I should feel about the Vikings winning the North, but I'll just set that aside. I've expressed my detest towards them. But Chicago getting in there, very possible, especially at that 7th spot. New Orleans, that's a weird one now with Michael Thomas, not Mike Thomas. Mike Thomas is not tweeting stuff about his team like Michael Thomas is. But that dysfunction, I don't know how that's going to work out. And then the West, I mean, that is going to be a dogfight with the Rams and the Niners there. I think I haven't done mine yet. I haven't ran through it and reevaluated it. But right now at this moment, I would give the Niners the division just because of how easy their schedule is. Like they were bottom of their division. But then again, I can't recite every game off the top of my head that they play. But yeah, swapping. I think whoever does not win the division in the West is going to be the 5 seed. That's just And then in the East, I could see Dallas making it in. Maybe. They're
8th in the conference for me. So I mean, they're not. They're not far.
They could definitely sneak in.
They're tied for 8th in the conference with the Packers. The Packers do have a tough schedule. That's the one thing that's tough there. I didn't talk about a lot of their games, but they're playing a lot of very good teams because they were a 1 seed last year. And like you said with the 49ers, a fourth place team in their division, you're definitely correct. The Niners have a very easy schedule compared to a lot of other talented teams in the NFL.
And I mean, in other episodes, we've talked about Aaron Rodgers and we think how he's going to operate. So if you want to check those out, you can hear why Hayden thinks that they might only go 9-8. Yeah. All your other games. I mean, every team that's at the bottom of their division, I think I agree with that. Yeah.
Just Minnesota.
Just Minnesota's the one thing I have a problem with.
I think the North is going to be a lot more interesting this season than you expect it to be. I hope it is. I hope it's just not the Packers reigning supreme forever. I don't want to just continue that.
Aaron Rodgers is going to take this year to just stat pad. Then he's going to go somewhere warm. Him and Devontae Adams.
Well, now that I've given everybody the rundown on what I think how everything is going to happen this season and how everything's going to play out. We will have another episode coming out this week as well at some point. It's going through how I think my playoffs will play out with the seeding I already described. So with that, that's everything I have for my schedule. Are you all set, Jake?
Yeah, I mean, one last thing. If we could probably make a graphic, put that up on our socials, check out Hayden's records, so that way you don't have to keep rewinding and being like, all right, so the Niners are going what now? You could just look at that graphic. They'll probably be up on our Twitter and Instagram, which you can see right there. Oh,
yeah,
how about
good
that?
job. Good job. I mean, you've got the TikTok and the YouTube channel below your head, but I mean, it's okay. They get the idea. It's all on the same banner. Yeah. Wrong way, but whatever. It's fine.
But besides that, I think we can cut it here.